All right, so everybody knows all guests on ZASLOW Show 2.0 are presented by our beer of choice, Johnny Cuba, lifestyle brand, European roots of the Caribbean soul, a refreshing German lager in a can. You know, that's how we like to enjoy it when we're watching pro wrestling, sitting on the couch in the Zaslow Mansion family room. Pick up yourself a six-pack right now of Johnny at your local Sedano's, Presidente, Winn-Dixie, Fresco y Mas. Always got to drink responsibly. And of course, don't forget Johnny Cuba's mantra, stay tranquilo. So we're coming off of a huge pro wrestling weekend, WrestleMania, of course. I told you a lot about Raw after Mania, which we'll get to as well. But the biggest news, as big a news there is really in the world of combat sports, you have the merger. Endeavor now has both UFC and WWE. So joining us here, he hosts the Extreme Life with Matt Hardy, Strictly Business, Eric Bischoff. And of course, we had him on when the rumors were running rampant a couple of months ago. Jon Alba here with us. John, I thought the Saudis bought WWE, wasn't it? It was a lock. That night, I remember it was a Tuesday night. You had the wrestling, the internet wrestling community was going crazy, and it was a done deal. Done deal. The Saudis own WWE. What happened?
I mean, if you talk to me, which we did talk, I'm pretty sure I told you that it wasn't a done deal, and that I'd heard, in fact, that it was quite the opposite of that. So I think people got some bad information, and it was as simple as that.
So I like having you on because the wrestling media is not necessarily the wrestling media is a weird place, but
it is.
Okay, good. but the interaction, especially around the wrestling media. Now, certainly I come from a sports background, but you know, I'm a lifelong pro wrestling fan. Right. I'm a lifelong pro wrestling fan. I got my pro wrestling show. It's still real to me on the weekends. So I'm kind of on the outside of all that. But it seems at times the wrestling media, and especially the interaction as well, it's a little bit of a toxic environment. Like, why is that? Is it just that the pro wrestling fan can be a little bit nutty at times? Is that what it is?
I think that a lot of it centers around the general scope of wrestling, that's not just media. I think people that are so ingrained in pro wrestling culture, it's like a bubble. And I say this especially with wrestlers and people who only know pro wrestling that have been in the industry for decades. They've never stepped foot outside of that bubble. And when you come from outside of the bubble, like people like yourself, people like I do, where, you know, I was a TV sports reporter for nearly a decade, you experience different things that allow you to put yourself into perspective on when you cover things and allow a different approach to some things. So I think that when you factor in wrestling media, for a lot of the people that are in wrestling media, and this is not a blanket statement because there are certainly many exceptions, but for a lot of people, this is their first real shot at covering anything. It's a lot of self-manifestation, if you will, which is awesome. But it also, in turn, kind of creates an environment where if they've never been outside that bubble, it becomes a little insulated.
It's an interesting way to put it. One of the things that I also enjoy about your coverage of pro wrestling, you clearly come across as a guy who enjoys pro wrestling. So much about pro wrestling out there is negative. Why they do this? Why they do this? I hate this. I hate all that. And I don't watch pro wrestling like that either. Like, I watch it because I enjoy it and I love it. And for the most part, I'm pretty positive about the thing that I love. I do wonder, though, so you were covering WrestleMania in a media capacity. I imagine, were you watching in the press box?
Yeah.
So what's that like, watching WrestleMania in the press box as opposed to, you know, in the crowd?
I mean, for me personally, it's no different than any other event that I've ever covered in my career. You know, I've covered the NFL, NBA, like that's, to me, that it's the same thing. For other people that are having that experience, it's probably a big difference. And I'm not saying that to come off as holier than thou or anything like that. It's just, I don't know, when you've been in that realm for so long, it doesn't really phase you, I guess. I watch wrestling. I feel my read on myself here is that I feel I watch it pretty objectively. I had some pretty passionate thoughts on how some of the weekend went down. I had a few tweets that I still stand by, for the record, but that doesn't get in the way of me objectively covering what I'm seeing in front of me. I think, you know, as far as the press box goes, I was always taught the old school, there's no cheering in the press box, there's no reacting, you watch it as objective as you can. So that's kind of my approach. That certainly wasn't the case for, I'd say, 80% of the people that were in the press box.
Is that right? Is that right?
There was hooting, hollering, and everything in between the entire time. But look, who am I to say? As long as it doesn't get in the way of me doing my work, people can do whatever the hell they want to do. So yeah, that's kind of my approach to it.
I really enjoy the press conferences now, which I guess AEW kind of started. I really enjoy how they do the press conferences now. And the line, depending on, I guess, which superstar you're speaking to, the line can be a little bit blurred between kayfabe and between actually talking about the business. Which style do you prefer when you're talking to the superstars after the event? Do you want them to be in character, or do you want them to actually give you the good nuggets as far as the business goes?
Personally, I have no interest in contributing to a kayfabe storyline unless I'm being paid to do so, right? So if I'm there covering it, I'm looking for authentic, real reactions from people. I don't understand what the purpose would be and what the benefit would be of me to ask Roman Reigns, how do you feel about being the tribal chief? Yeah, it doesn't service an audience. It doesn't service anything. And that has been something a little difficult for me personally, where I come from in my career, and then being in these press conference settings where you do have some individuals who are there to ask some quote unquote real questions. Then there are others who their priority who play along. And look, who am I to say what you can and can't do, right? I don't have that jurisdiction. Is there a way that I view that it should be? Sure. But ultimately, that's not my call. I feel like the questions I did ask in these press conferences were fairly serviceable to the public and getting quality responses. That I wrote 2 long-form recap features for SE Scoops, and they serviced my pieces. I know that because I wasn't going to do in-character answers for these pieces, but to each their own.
I loved WrestleMania 39. I thought it was a phenomenal show. I mean, I went on ZASLOW Show 2.0 on Monday, and I just, which is mainly sports, and we saved the wrestling for the weekend. But I mean, just for me, no one does entertainment like WWE. I mean, just it's another level. I loved, before we get to the serious stuff, give me your thoughts here on the main event Sunday night. I loved the finish. I was completely shook with the finish. And I think that's when pro wrestling's at its best, is when we're just completely surprised. And that's, I mean, John, I was shook at the end of the night Sunday. I couldn't believe what I just watched, and I loved it.
I mean, I think that was the general consensus, that it was a lot of shock. It's a matter of whether you loved it or you didn't like that shock. I tweeted it out in the moment. Maybe my emotions got the best of me as someone who cares about the industry, and you get your thoughts, and I had some time to breathe on it a little bit, but I think it's going to go down as an all-time missed opportunity. I really do. I think surprises can be fun, but I think a swerve for the sake of a swerve doesn't necessarily equate to the right thing. And my assessment after 24, 48 hours is that they're going to probably try to drag this out to next WrestleMania with Cody, and that he's going to have to overcome hurdles to get back to that point before he finally gets it. And listen, that can be an effective story to tell for some people. It certainly can. It's kind of similar to what his dad went through. But I'm also cognizant that you get so few opportunities in wrestling to really make somebody. And there was an opportunity Sunday night where you had 80,000 people who were ready to see Cody Rhodes become the next John Cena. So now by dragging that out for a year, there's a lot of variables at stake. Will he be as hot a year from now?
What if he gets hurt again?
What if he gets hurt again? What if Roman Reigns gets hurt? What if the crowd finds somebody else they'd rather like to see? And then they start turning on Cody at no fault of his own. All the clouds, or all the stars rather, had aligned. I'm sorry, I'm exhausted. I apologize. All the stars had aligned to create the moment. And sometimes it's okay for guys to just win and be cool. What if Dave Bautista lost to Triple H because he needed to overcome more hurdles and face him a year later. Would that crowning moment have been as significant for him? No, no way. So look, I'm glad that you liked it. That's awesome. For me, I think it's going to go down, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. But I think it's going to go down as an all-time missed opportunity.
How long do you think they knew that Roman was retaining?
Probably about a week or so.
So it pretty much went down to the wire. I mean, not day of.
That's me using some context clues and having talked to some people, but I think it's probably about a week or so they knew for sure.
Yeah. Before we get to the business part of it, and this kind of is a part, or it might be a part of the actual business that took place with Vince. You know, how much is he back in charge? Is he back in charge? The sale with Endeavor. John, I'm watching Monday Night Raw, all right? And I already told you the way that I watch pro wrestling. I watch it because I love it, all right? I don't bitch and moan. I don't complain. And in the middle of that show Monday night, John, I had to go onto Twitter and straight up, this is a bad show. This Raw After Mania is supposed to be a great show. Maybe the biggest Raw of the year. John, that was not a good show Monday night.
Yeah, I was in the air while the show was on air, so I didn't get a chance to watch any of it live, but by all accounts and everything that I've been seeing, it seemed to reflect the older guard of what we had become familiar with Monday Night Raw. And you know, that's again what I'm talking about from like the character perspective with Cody. Is my understanding that he said that the better man won with Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns cheated to win. So how are we supposed to care about Cody's pursuit if he's a supposed top good guy who is bending at the knee there? To me, that's just improper character development. And like, I know that sounds bougie and over the top, but this stuff matters when you're talking about linear storytelling. And if we're supposed to believe that they're going to sustain Cody another year here, this stuff, the little things matter.
So the sale to Endeavor, and there are tweets, rumors, how much Vince is involved. CNBC Monday morning, he's there with Ari Emanuel. He's going to be overseeing creative. He's not going to be in the weeds. And then we get the show that we got Monday night. And I never know how much to believe. Oh, Vince ripped up the script and he was writing a new one 10 minutes before Raw goes live. Like, I never know. Like, I remember asking Brian Gewirtz about that, you know, like a year ago. And he said he never witnessed Vince actually tear up a script. All right. So I don't know how much of that is hyperbole and how much is real. But John, we're getting these reports that Vince is back in charge. And I'm telling you, this was the worst Monday Night Raw that I can remember. So what's going on here?
Well, we know that multiple advertised matches changed at the last minute.
Oh, it's a bait and switch.
There's a video of Seth Rollins in the ring about to cut a promo, and then a production guy comes down and is like, oh, no, never mind. No, you're not anymore. So,
John, yeah. They had Seth Rollins walk to the ring, have the crowd serenade him, and that was the end of the segment.
Yeah, He had grabbed a mic, and he was going to address the crowd, and then the production guy in the commercial break was like, nope, go to the back, which... I mean, you can't tell me that doesn't mean that there's changes going on. There 100% are changes going on the fly. And listen, in TV, changes happen. Like that does happen. But, you know, this report, as we tape this on Tuesday, the report from Sean Ross Sapp that dropped a couple hours ago, talking about the mass frustration felt at this Raw taping. It certainly indicates that the idea that Vince McMahon is just going to be loosely involved and not in the weeds, it seems like that may not be the case.
And so Triple H, who, I mean, everyone would agree has just been doing a fantastic job for the last, what are we talking, 8 months here. Like Triple H, I mean, look, if Vince is in charge, Vince is in charge, but Triple H is just going to stay there and not be in charge, even though he's supposed to be. Like, it's, I don't know what the right phrase is I'm looking for. It's kind of demeaning almost. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, listen, his position is the chief content officer. So if that's what his job is, that's what his job is. And one thing we've learned with Vince when it comes to content is that there's always been a fall guy set up. We saw it with Paul Heyman. We saw it with Eric Bischoff. There's always been a fall guy. Could it be Paul Levesque? I don't know. Might this just be an anomaly and Vince ran Raw because he was in Los Angeles anyway, and then this is just a one-off and that's it? Sure, maybe that's the case. I guess we'll find out with SmackDown this week.
Do you believe Endeavor is I mean, look, we don't know about the Vince stuff, but in general, is Endeavor a good company to now own 51% of WWE and UFC as opposed to the last time we spoke? And if a Saudi group were buying, that probably creates all different kinds of complicated scenarios. So is this, if WWE was going to be sold, which it was this one of the better case scenarios?
I mean, I think from a business perspective for them, it's hard for me to say financially what a Saudi investment group would have looked like. But listen, there was a $9.3 billion evaluation on it. There's a lot of synergy between UFC and WWE for opportunities there. It's a sensible buy for Endeavor, in my opinion. And they kind of fit within a similar realm where there's marketing opportunities, there's crossover opportunities. So yeah, I mean, it certainly makes a lot of sense on the surface level. The further questions become, how does the pay-per-view model change, if at all? How does the content distribution model change, if at all? Does Vince McMahon get in the weeds of creative? And how do talent feel about this? How are they affected? We know that UFC doesn't particularly pay its fighters very well in the grand scheme of things. Would something like that translate over to WWE, where wrestlers are paid pretty well?
Were you surprised at UFC being valued $3 billion more than WWE?
No, because of the pay-per-view model and the existing deal with ESPN. I think that helps leverage UFC's value quite a bit.
What do you imagine is going to happen with the TV deals? Those are coming up before the end of this year. Like, any idea what direction WWE is going to want to go there now? Is it going to have to be a similar type thing as UFC, or are they going to operate, you think, as their own entities?
Well, it's different because UFC is not weekly television in the same way that WWE is. So I think that you'll see similar television deals to what WWE currently has. I imagine they'll get some sort of rights increase. How much, I don't know. But I would imagine it'll be similar to that. I think the bigger thing is, where does the streaming library go and what happens with the pay-per-view model? I think those are the two biggest questions more than anything else. Would UFC and WWE share a streaming platform? That's certainly an appealing option that they could explore. Does WWE venture into the territory of the UFC pay-per-view model where you have a blanket subscription and then you're paying individual prices for pay-per-views? Could they go that route? How much would fans get behind that, given they've been getting pay-per-views essentially for free for the last 10 years?
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions at hand there.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, John. Every month I was being charged an extra $50 a month to my cable bill, you know? That's a lot of money.
I mean, I remember being a kid and being like to my mom, I'm like, hey, listen, No Mercy 2000 is happening tomorrow. Can
good.
Can I get this? Yeah, but it's $35. Yeah, but I want to see Kurt Angle win. That's how it was.
What finally here, John? Like I said, I loved WrestleMania this weekend. I thought it was phenomenal. What was your favorite moment, just as a fan? What was your favorite moment of the weekend?
Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens winning. I thought that was one of the most fantastic WWE tag team matches that I've ever seen. It was one of the loudest reactions I've ever heard in person. And that was exactly what I'm circling back to with this Cody stuff. Like, that was a star-making moment for Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. And you could have had that same thing the next night where you really elevated someone. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens are forever elevated after a moment like that. I would argue that Kevin Owens benefits more from that even than he did from the Stone Cold Steve Austin main event last year. It legitimized these guys in a way that you can only harness that energy so many times. You get so lucky. Maybe you get a moment like that once every 5 or 6 years. And I just felt they had that with Cody, and it just didn't happen. And that really stunk. These were some of the best entrances at a WrestleMania. I'll say Cena's entrance with the Make-A-Wish kids, Bianca Belair with the Divas of Compton, Ray with the Eddie Guerrero entrance was super cool. So the pageantry was there. I just felt that the Cody loss really, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. Wrestling it's as I said in the press conference, booking is subjective. But as far as my read on it is, I really do believe they missed an all-time great opportunity to cement what was an all-time great championship match. I thought they had a fantastic match, Cody and Roman. And they just sometimes, Mr. Zaslow, sometimes it's okay to let the good guy just get a win.
I think you're also saying sometimes it's okay to go in the direction that everybody expects you to go in.
because everyone expected Sammy and Kevin Owens to win. Did it hurt the moment at all?
No, it was great. It was great.
It was great.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you don't watch a Batman movie expecting Batman to lose at the end.
I'd be shook if Joker killed Batman at the end of Dark Knight. I'd be shook.
Right. So I just watched The Dark Knight on the plane last night, and I was thinking about something similar. It's like Batman spears Two-Face. Spoiler alert for anyone 15 years later. Batman spears Two-Face off this platform and kills Two-Face, and then he goes off running into the distance. After Two-Face shot him in the chest, by the way.
That's right.
Like, what if the movie just ended with Two-Face just shooting Jim Gordon's son, and that's the end of it?
Yep.
For the sake of it, because you didn't expect it.
Swerve,
you'll have to tune into the You'll have to tune into the sequel.
Yep.
No, see, I just don't. Sometimes it's okay for the good guy to win. Just saying.
John, tell everyone how they could catch a course. Extreme Life with Matt Hardy, Strictly Business. Go ahead.
Yeah, Extreme Life of Matt Hardy drops every single Friday wherever you get your podcasts, early access, adfreeshows.com, Strictly Business, wherever you get your podcasts every Thursday, adfreeshows.com, early access as well. You can find me on Fite, the streaming platform, hosting a bunch of content there. I laid down a ton of content for them this WrestleMania week. And Out of Bounds with Jon Alba dropping every Monday, which is me doing some sports talk, stepping into my old arena and your arena. I got to get over to the mansion now. You dropped that in the beginning there, man. You got to let me know, and we'll do it up big.
UFC is down here in Miami this weekend. Huge fight,
I'm a little tired from traveling, but we can try to set that up for the future.
I'm a little not interested in forking over $1,000 a ticket for UFC this Saturday night down in Miami. How about that?
Fair point.
John, excellent job. Always love having you on the show. Thank you, man. Thanks
for having me.